Right. Looks like we've got a good connection. Good, yes. If you hear cat noises, it's because there is a cat. Hopefully she will settle down soon. I have gone and added chapters to the last 2 streams, which I had been neglecting to do, but doing that has been such a great exercise. It really forces me to catch up on exactly what I did in the prior streams, which is good when I'm not doing a good job of showing up consistently to do these like I wanted to. It is morning. I talked about doing these in the evening. My brain is better in the mornings. I'm figuring it out. Don't eat my biscuit. Don't do it. I'm also having breakfast midstream. So let's get into it. The tabs is what I was working on, and I was beginning to work on space, and I was really struggling with the placement of this hover container. I think this setup where it's in the corner is where I needed to land, but I don't think I really clocked that in the last stream. I kind of got there, but the other thing that kept coming up, I kept saying this in the streams was, oh, I really should be working from the inside first. I was kind of going outside in instead of inside out, which, you know, hold on, this is worth the big face scene in OBS. It is so much better to work inside out, because as you get your inside pieces finalized and in the correct places, with the correct dimensions, with the correct styling, then you're just building on top of what you already have, and you know it's solid. But if you work outside in, a value that you might choose for, especially with space, a spacing value or a size value that you might choose for an outer dimension could change when you go to address the size or the space of an inside dimension, right? Because the inside is pushing on the outside, right? It is likely that the outer element is hugging the inner element. So this is where I really appreciate the inside out build approach that Figma kind of encourages us to do. When you do the keyboard shortcut, when you do Shift A, right? You are wrapping an auto layout frame around whatever selection you might have. And so you're kind of like building your onion layers up, right? This is something that MDS talks about in his killer auto layout tutorial. There was a couple Halloweens ago. He did a really, really good video about just like how he works with auto layout, his creative process around it when he doesn't use it. And frequently QAing is another thing that's a really important part of his process. So I will link to that because it is fantastic. If you struggle with auto layout, it is worth a watch. I very much recommend it. I also have a blog post about why people struggle so much with auto layout. I think it's because they don't take time to learn the mechanics, is what it mostly boils down to. But after that, you're flying. So now we can actually get into the tab. So if we look at what's the innermost elements here, like what is the smallest, most inner sanctum value that we could affect here? It's probably the space between the label and the thumbnail. It's also going to be things like the positioning of the close icon in relation to this label overflow gradient. So what the heck is this? Oh, that must have been a slice that I made when I was demoing auto layout. Still don't know what the slice tool is for. Let's make sure that these are good. And actually the typography, I really do need to nail the typography if I want the spacing to be correct, because depending on, especially the font size, I'm less concerned with the letter spacing, like what's going on here, but the height of this, right? The height of the text is going to absolutely impact what I'm doing with my padding top and bottom in the containers that are around label. So I feel good about this because height-wise, we are pretty much there. Letter spacing is a little off, right? It could be a bit further apart, maybe something like 1%, maybe something like 2%. Hey, you know what? Maybe we just go ahead and do that. Let's go and make a letter spacing and number variable. So I remember also organizing by element and then things within that element, and we've got text and we have the font size. We do not have letter spacing yet. For Chrome, we want it to be 2. We know that's going to translate to a percentage. Letter spacing, and let's also scope this after the fact, but really make sure that that only shows up where we want. It's not going to get in our way elsewhere. Good. Okay. Hold on, that's much too wide, 2%. Interesting. Oh, because this is in pixels. That was good to know, though, that I can just plug in a percentage and it'll do the calculation for me. Let's fiddle with that, though, because this doesn't look quite right. Let's do 5. We need just a touch more. Let's do 0.1, 0.2. Oh, that's actually going to be more correct because if we want 2%, yeah. Okay, there we go. Good enough. Okay. The overflow gradient. Oh, right, this is not an active tab. Hold on, so if we make this an active tab, that's where our spacing changes. Okay. And it looks like this is still kind of off a little bit. So this close tab, let's set the opacity of this guy to 50 so we can really overlay it and see what's going on. So yeah, our X needs to scooch over. And since it's absolute positioned, we can just do that quite easily. So yeah, before it was over here, now it's over here. Good. That doesn't really affect our spacing too much. But it is far too far over in here. There we go. Also, the pipe is not quite in the right spot. And it is absolute position 2, so that's good. We can adjust. I wonder if we need these feet, these little, extra feet when we are building a set, because this one kind of takes care of it. I want the 0 pixels in between. Active neighbor left. Active neighbor none. Perhaps we don't need them at all. I wonder if I did that because auto layout. If these had a fill on them, then those little feet might be necessary. I think for now, I'm gonna hide them. I don't wanna like delete them. I might wanna bring them back if I realize that they're needed. But for now, I'm gonna hide them and I'm gonna leave a comment for future me. Okay. What other inner elements? Where's my prototype one? That's a good one to be testing out. Okay, so what still doesn't feel right is the spacing of this. You can see, yeah, it's like coming right up against the edge, but in real life, there's much more room. It's like the max width of, oh, and I think I realized this too in last streams. It's like the max width of an inactive tab is larger, but I don't really want to do that because it's going to mean things are going to shift when there's a state change. Because these, I believe, yes, are set to fill, but they are filling against a maximum width value. Let's actually place a couple of these to see what's going on with the, like, our spacing. So we've got 5 pixels, and in this case, the foot kind of mostly sits outside, but not all the way. You can see we've got like some of the slope here, and then this tiny, tiny, tiny little bit. And how do we actually have this set up? In this case, the tab is all the way, the foot is all the way outside of the bounds of the tab. So something we could do, how would I make this? I think this would involve wrapping this in a frame, right curve container, doing something like this. I don't want this to be absolute positioned necessarily. Gonna have to adjust the padding values here, or rather wrap all of this in a container with no padding if I want this right curve to actually be, yes, up against this edge. Or actually instead, no, get the right curve out of there, out of that frame. Position it over here. Where'd you go? This should not be absolute positioned. God, Figma is so annoying about that. I don't think I want any space between. I want frame 41 to be using auto layout, and it should be hugging on everything. No space between. Let's just call this container for now. The styling of this needs to get copied and applied to container. Let's make sure all that came over. We've got our padding. We've got the fill, which allows us to remove the variables, the fill from this. This can now be zeros across the board. So you've got container handling all that. This is closer to what I want. I want the right curve over here. What is this? Hugging. This is closer to what I want. So we have this right curve container that is allowing the outer frame to mostly hug on the tab, but you have this little tiny piece of foot sticking out. And that gives us the same effect. And of course you can see that there's other cleanup that needs to be done here. But if I stretch this out, that gives us, it'll give us the same effect of where I can have these actually touch. I can have, when I'm setting up a set of tabs, 0 space between, but a little bit of spillover with that foot. So let's see how that shapes up. And then what the heck is this? Label overflow. Oh, this needs to get fixed. I noticed this in a past stream too. This is just it needs to look like this with these constraint settings. It doesn't. So we need to go to the right and up. And hover container. Somehow this is offset. It shouldn't be. Oh, it's absolute positioned. That's what's going on. Or no, it's not. Whoa, whoa, whoa. What's up? Why is that allowed to come out of that container? Hold on. Well, and also, first of all, let's just duplicate this. Flip the foot around. Position it inside where it wants to be. Put that on the other side. Get rid. I think it's this left curve that's maybe messing us up. Okay. Yes. So that's a lot closer to what I want. And then yes, this hover container is more or less in the correct spot. But then we need, come on, hover container. Oh wait, sorry. This overflow needs to extend top and bottom, and we need it to have those settings to match this one. Yay! Okay, that was squirrely for a minute, but we figured it out. All right. You can see that our other auto layout settings abandoned us. We need this to be filling. It's not. Container needs to be filling. Which, yes, that makes sense that this would be set to fixed. Hover container also might have gotten messed up in the process. Yeah, fill. There we go. Okay. But now, right, you can see our padding got weird. Padding left on the container, yeah, it shouldn't be this dramatic. Same for hover container. Again, let's start with the innermost parts, which would be hover container. So the padding of hover container needs to get reduced for Chrome. Oh, that was top bottom. Let's go back to 6. There we go. Left, right. That looks to be correct. So now we've got 3. And we've got 0 on the right, but this is absolute positioned. And that makes sense. There's nothing on the right that we need to worry about. Okay, so that's hover container. What about a regular container? This is where we'd be dealing with the size. Oh, right, and I had to have different values in different states. So strange. Let's see if I'm correct here. So left padding, tab size. Yes, size, because that was one of the things I remember in the last stream talking about. There's a difference between size and space. Size has to do with the dimensions of a thing. Space is empty, the round stuff. Okay. So, shoot, I got lost of what I was doing. We're making sure that these are correct. I think we're good. But maybe we do need to update the max width. What if I increase it by 4? That looks correct, because you get the X in the correct spot. Okay, so increasing the max width by 4. What does that do for this, though? That gets this all out of whack. So yeah, if we have these and it's 0, oh, and since these are in a frame now, let's put both of these back to 100%, and then we'll set the parent frame around at 50. Okay, and I think I can put my favicon in here. Hold on, I'm gonna do a little upload. Just find that from Dropbox. There we go. Yeah, that's good, just to test out that the favicon size, that placeholder image layer, is indeed correct. Okay. So yeah, we need to work on the size of an inactive tab. And so what we have here, we have the size of a tab in the top padding in its default state, in its top padding, or in the bottom in its, we've got top default, top hover, those are the same. We have bottom default, but we don't have bottom hover, and we have left default, and we have right default. And it looks like for Firefox, these were different, but let's focus on Chrome first. So right, for an inactive tab, the hover container is what we can affect some change on. So let's increase for hover container in padding, the left padding. Let's push this over because it needs to be to 10. And then specifically, again, we can go to this guy, the close tab only on our inactive. Oh, and this will address those placement issues. If I nudge it over just 3 times. Oh, this might have, I think we've solved it, guys. I think we've done it. Now if I bring this up and put it into place, that's basically where I want it. I think I'm missing a pixel. I think I need this to be like 1 pixel taller. And so again, on tab, on the bottom, for size, if I increase it from 5 to 6, that does it for everybody. And I can reposition the pipe. The pipe needs to come back over. So if we go to main component, pipe, grab those, and then I'm going to come back to my instance. Yeah, bring it over 3. Okay, I think we are in business. So much fiddling to get something accurate, you know, but it is satisfying. This looks a lot closer, this hover state. But what's going on here? This is interesting. We've got a pipe. Oh, before it was able to be hidden. Ah, yes, because, yes, we have this whole thing. And oh, hold on, this weird little, okay, what is up? I need these containers to always be the same height. We want them to be not absolute positioned, but I do need them to be filling all available space. And actually, yeah. So we don't want to fill that direction. Let's fill this direction and fill this direction. These inner pieces should be absolute positioned. I guess you can't do that to both at once. So these are filling now. And we've got the feet glued to the bottom. That seems right. Does that fix our problems up here? But then what do we do with these pipes? I guess when we do have an active neighbor, active neighbor none, active neighbor left, active neighbor right. Oh, an active neighbor right doesn't have a pipe. So there is still a need for that property because that gets rid of the pipe here. All right. Good stuff. Okay, so let's look at this again. This is kind of interesting. You can still see the pipe here. When I'm hovering over this middle tab, the pipe of the one on the left is visible. I don't think that's going to be the case in real life. So yeah, it also goes away. I'm deciding how much I care about that. I also think I might have made these too wide. Oh, it's not that those are too wide, maybe. I'm gonna increase the size again from 3 to 4, but rather the right padding, I think, of these can drop. The think we've got the 6 right default. Is that the same here? Yeah, maybe not. I mean, let's look at the actual. So there's this like really nice gap between that hover container and then like this space around, and mine is just a bit too wide on that vertical part. You can see we've got the gap here, but then it widens when we come up and around the corner. I do not want that. So how can it be addressed? It's the hover container with the shape, but then it's compounded. So the hover container is correct, but like since we added in this container for the foot to address like that little bit of overlap to make it so that way these can be zero space between, we've widened that gap. So then that means the gap of this tab, this, I'm arriving back at these 6 pixels, needs to be less. But what that impacts is also, for container, it's these 6 pixels, which I can't mess with. So that means I think we need to separate out our variables. There needs to be padding handled specifically for inactive tabs. So we have tab right default. We will leave that for our active tabs. Let's duplicate this right default. We will call this inactive default. This will be active default. Inactive ought to be less. Let's cut it in half. And so for 3 there, so then we, within hover container. Oh, no, not within hover container. Let's grab all of these. Padding right, inactive default, right? So then that nudges us over by 3 pixels. Good. And then if we open up our prototype, that looks a lot closer. You can see what that's doing there. That might have solved it. If I increase this to 6, as if it had the same value from before, you can see now the gap is large again. But when I decrease to 3, yeah, boom. Okay, so that solves that gap. We still have our pipe kind of showing up. I could hide it. I could do some trickery with like negative whatever, whatever. Yeah, I don't know if I want to. Oh, hold on. There's a way to access modes and prototypes now, isn't there? I thought there was. I wanted to set this in dark mode, but we can do it from here. Dark. Oh, how exciting. Okay. So that, I think, sorts out the spacing for our tabs. Very, very exciting. But is it good for real life? Hold on. Yeah, what's going on here? Oh, interesting. Watch what happens if I hide this. Yeah, we get closer. Okay, hold on. So we are still off. I mean, this looks convincing enough. Like this fully mocked up version up here, but I do want it to be, I want to really strive for accuracy here. So for our active tab, yeah, padding is still weird. If we look at this container, if we look at hover container, let's do the same thing. Let's duplicate this. We have left, we have our active tab, and we have left for our inactive tab. So let's go to hover container. Let's switch this to active. Everything else is inactive. And watch when I scoot that over, this stays the same. And in fact, actually, does this need to be scooched down to 9? It does. Okay. A lot closer there. And what about our space between? Maybe this needs to be an 8. Hover container. 7. This is in tab space. 8. Boom. Oh my gosh. Oh, it feels so good. Okay. Oh, excellent. Excellent. Okay. Why do we have this like 1 pixel? What is up with that? Okay. All right, but then all that moving stuff around, you can see, ah, man, just endless, endless fiddling, but we need to get these tiny pieces right. It's important. It allows us to have a better time when we go to do the big pieces. Oh, and hold on. So if we need to move this to, oh, thank God, we need to move it to the left. I was worried we'd have to move it to the right. Okay. Good. And let's see what that does over here. Okay, well then this starts looking weird, doesn't it? Hold on, let me, no. I'm gonna drop a favicon in. Something realistic. Is that realistic? It's realistic in here. I am wanting to, oh wait, let's actually, hold on. I want to test if, because the layer structure is getting different, I need to make sure that overrides persist. Okay, this is interesting to see this active and inactive, to see there being a shift because of those feet containers. That's what's causing that. Yeah, if I set all of these to fill. Oh, oops, I don't want all of them to fill. I just want the tabs. I wonder if in prototyping that's going to get weird. Yeah, we also have, okay. Let's try it out. Let's set up some prototyping variables real quick. We will set up a kind of throwaway collection. We'll call this prototyping. And the way that this would work is you would need one for each tab. So we've got tab 1, tab 2, tab 3. By default, let's have tab 1 be false. And this is why it's important for your component API to be nice and tight, nice and clean, because we need a Boolean property to hook up that Boolean to. So this is going to be tab 1, and it's going to be active. And we have tab 2, inactive, tab 3, inactive, all right? And now when we go to prototype over these, we want to say, we want to have click events, and we are going to update the variable. We will update tab 1 to be inactive. This is just like I would do with radio buttons, like I would do with, I mean, tabs is a good example. Breadcrumb trails, what else? Pagination, anything where only one item can be active in a list. So tab 1 is going to be set to false when we're clicking on tab 2. We also want to make sure that we are setting tab 2 to true, because that's the one that we are selecting. And finally, the third tab, tab 3, is also set to false. This triggering all, come on, not triggering, but rather having an event for all of the items in the set means that we can kind of have, we can have any path be possible. We can start from anywhere, we can end anywhere. We don't have to happy path this. Okay, and then let's set up, I think there's a way to copy these. Like, since I'm in prototyping mode, copy, paste? No. Just like a way to kind of duplicate this stuff. I feel like I've done that before. No, okay, that's okay. We'll set it up from scratch. We'll have an on-click event. We're going to set the variable of tab 1. And I always go in order of the items in the list, even though tab 2, like, is where we started. I did not start with setting the tab 2 variable. But in this case, it's the first item in the list. So we have tab 1 set to true. We'll do a second one here. Tab 2 becomes false. Tab 3 becomes false. And finally, just for testing interactions, on click, set variable tab 1. Again, start with the first item in the list, set tab 1 to true, set tab 2 to, oh, I'm sorry, set tab 1 to false, tab 2 to false, and tab 3 to true, because that's the one we're clicking on, tab 3, true. Okay, so now false, true, false, and then this one should be true, false, false, true, false, false. Good. Okay, so now in this prototype, let's see. Yeah, they scooch around, so that's not going to work. So we need to make sure that that jumping doesn't happen. We need to update our variables so that way there's, even if they're different values, because we're kind of affecting different elements here, that yeah, just that they're not scooting around like this. Okay. Oh my gosh, Mihai, I didn't even realize you were in the chat. I'm so sorry. I had my Finder window covering it. That was my bad. I don't know if you're still here, but thank you for jumping in. Okay, I'm going to tackle updating the padding again. That was this whole stream, was just fiddling with padding to get the spacing right. I think it will be worth doing, but I will address the jumping between states in the next stream. And I am, like, this is on my mind. It has been bothering me that I've been less consistent with my streaming schedule, so I do want to fix that. This is a pretty low stakes stream, though. I know I've got Mihai following along, but yeah, even for one person, I feel obligated to show up and be more consistent. But as always, I will schedule things in advance so you'll know. I imagine that YouTube sends out some sort of notification to subscribers when I've scheduled something. Unsure. Anyway, stay warm if it is cold where you are in the world. It is here in Washington, D.C. And I will see you